This is Coda Radio, episode 365 for July 8th, 2019. Hello, and welcome to Coda Radio, Jupiter Broadcasting's weekly talk show that takes a pragmatic look at the art and business of software development and related technologies. My name is Wes, and I'm very pleased to be joined by that firecracking Floridian who's had one too many fireworks this time around, Mr. Michael Dominic. Hi, Mike.
Get off my lawn!
I know. I transitioned from being a fun-loving lad in my youth who liked blowing things up, frankly.
Yeah.
And now I'm a dog owner, so it's just about the worst thing in the world. I think we've got one other person who snuck in the nick of time. Mr. Chris Fisher. Hello, Chris.
Hey, guys. Thanks for having me back.
Oh, we wouldn't be without you.
I kind of am a little relieved that I'm not the only one. I had the same transition. Like this year, I was like, oh, can we just not?
Yep.
It's just, it's kind of a futz. I prefer just the professional shows. You can go there if you want to see it. Yeah. It's usually away from most of the housing.
I could even go with another compromise. How about we just all agree from like 8 p.m. to midnight, you have that on the 4th of July. And we'll just all prepare for that. It's like the day before, and today we're recording on the 8th, and my neighbors are still setting off fireworks.
Still going strong.
I'm kind of like, okay, how about we just compromise, meet somewhere in the middle here? That's all.
Actually,
I'm such an old man.
I looked up how to do some CSS fireworks, so that's another tech-powered solution. Just don't blow anything up. Use the computer.
I just wanted to go out to the neighborhood kids and say, this is the blink tag. Knock yourselves out.
You know what? It is the real-life version of the blink tag, isn't it?
It really is, right?
Good call. I think that's exactly it. Okay, now, I feel a little affronted here because every time I come on the show, you guys put Mac news stories in the doc, and I didn't even do anything. I didn't do any of this.
I will back you up on this. It just happens, and we've talked about it enough.
It was Joe.
We want to follow up on stories that we cover, right? It just makes sense. It's our instinct.
I think Alan, Jude, and Joe are conspiring against me to get the audience to think that I'm the Mac guy on the show. Is what it is. And you guys are just complicit.
Despite overseeing the Linuxification, that's hard to say, but regardless, you made that happen here in the studio, right? I mean, there's hardly a Mac to be seen.
I prefer the term freeing the studio, Wes.
Oh, freeing the studio.
Oh, God.
It was more about philosophy than functionality.
Oh, burn. Nice. Wow, I am really impressed how you turned that around on me. Dang it. Okay, well, so I think the big hoopla story that kind of leads into this thing that I was sort of implying is, it's now, as you guys talked about, on the record that Johnny Ive is officially on the way out.
See ya.
B, we've had that Wall Street Journal article that said that Cook wasn't involved, and then we had Tim Cook make this super strong
Oh, yeah, that was response. A little awkward.
And now there is what seems to me, at least having followed this for a while, so this is where I get this kind of feeling, is a very intentionally leaked story. Because now we have multiple sources that are claiming that the new MacBook Pro later this year will have a totally new keyboard mechanism. And when you start seeing these kinds of leaks, and I'm curious to know Mike's take on this, it kind of feels like an intentional leak by Apple to set a narrative after this Ive announcement.
Wait. Are you suggesting that they would conveniently try to imply that the crappy keyboard that was way too thin to be useful was the responsibility of a very controversial and famous designer who that now he's leaving, we can have a good keyboard? Is that what you're trying to say?
I mean, it kind of seems that way, Mike. It kind of seems that way.
And wasn't it interesting how Tim Cook, very Clark Kent-esque, flew around the media saying, I make all these decisions.
Yeah.
And now we have a good keyboard. Yeah, I mean, this is some Floridian gator bacon. I don't think Johnny Ive cares. I think he's a knight and rich.
Yeah.
It's true. I mean, he comes out of this fine in every situation.
Like, if anybody's ever shipped a product, particularly physical products, there's just no way this just happened, right?
Oh, yeah, right. I mean, if it's got to be in the works for a long time.
Oh, no doubt about it. No doubt. I think that the Ive transition has been in the works since Apple Park wrapped up. That's my estimation. If you look back at some of the way they've been communicating about Ive's role and a promotion that he got around then and all of that, it kind of all equals to the beginning of a transition. And I would say there was no winning here for Apple, because if Tim Cook was hyper involved and trying to be involved in every single design decision, something tells me Johnny Ive wouldn't like that either.
Yeah, right.
So it's either he's not involved enough or he's too involved. And I don't think there was ever going to be a happy medium, because just my sense of the personality types at work here.
And Apple's trying to combat the narrative that I perhaps way too hard hit last week, that, Tim Cook really is effectively an operations guy, right? Because, I don't know why. We've all three of us talked about this for a long time on different shows in this show, but for some reason the big tech companies love the idea of the CEO as like the God King coming down and
not
the tyrant. Yes.
I think it's silly. Like, I would actually be more impressed if they came down and said, "My name's Tim Cook. I am one of the best operations people in the world. So I just hired the best programmers and designers to do that for me." Right? Like, but they can't say that. So
I don't know. That's what I would say. It seems like a pretty reasonable approach.
And how other industries do it, right? I mean, you're there to operate the business.
The ones that aren't media darling industries.
Right. Although, I mean, Apple does things a little differently, right? And their history has been kind of written by these big design changes. It was not business as usual.
I think we also have to be fair. They're sort of the architect of the celebrity CEO for the tech industry. He's not the first celebrity CEO. I mean, hello, Edison.
Hello, Mark Shuttleworth.
Yeah. But, for that Silicon Valley area, he sort of is the architect, whatever I'm trying to say.
We're talking about Ken Metcalf, right?
No, of course not. I'm talking about Wozniak.
Oh.
It seems only kind of fair that people still view them in that light, but it's not the reality of a company at their scale. Like, when you look at the people on the team, like Craig Federighi, and Phil Schiller, and I would have probably cited Ive before. Mm-hmm. They seem like exceptionally talented individuals who have been at the company for a very long time. And recently they've been featured more and more on podcasts. So I've actually gotten a chance to hear them in a less structured, less promotional setting. And they're very intelligent individuals. I don't know if you've had that same assessment, Mike, but it seems like, for example, Craig Federighi really knows his shit.
Of course, right? I mean, for all our trolling on this show, which, by the way, is supposed to be entertainment too, right? You don't become a director of insert department here at Apple without being a very smart, very capable person.
Yeah.
That was too nice.
Yeah, I just expected some further vitriol there, but no, I guess.
All right, so to the topic on point here that really matters to the audience is, depending on who you follow, some people would argue that the MacBook Pro is one of the premier developer platforms, especially if you're in Xcode. It's one of your only options, really, if you want to be a mobile developer.
Or if you want to do HomePod development.
Still now, if you go work for some big, some tech company, more than likely you're getting a MacBook, right, on your first day.
So the potential ramifications here are a new MacBook Pro with a larger screen that is, let's just say in theory, for the sake of this conversation, designed by that new, or led by that new Pro team. The same team that had influence on the iMac Pro, the new Mac Mini, and the Mac Pro. Let's say they've also been involved in a Mac Pro for professionals, like the King Mac Pro. They're going to have to call it, they can't call it like Mac Pro Plus or whatever. Maybe they will.
Oh, so is that like a Mac Pro Pro? Wait.
Maybe they'll call it, what do they call is it X? What do they call the larger iPhone? Is it just Plus still?
XL. It's XL.
Maybe they'll call it the MacBook XL. I mean, I don't know.
I could see it, yeah.
Or they'll just call it the MacBook 16-inch, and it'll just be implied that the 16-inch version is more powerful.
Workhorse.
Right. And the rumor here is that it switches to, actually, the rumor is they're going to start with a MacBook Air. But I just for the purposes of conversation, let's say they launch a MacBook Pro, larger screen. This one even has an SD card reader. It's got a new keyboard. It's still all USB-C, but it's got lots of USB-C. They're all Thunderbolt 3 ports. It's got this bigger screen. It's got a great keyboard. Let's just, for the sake of argument, say it's like the T480's keyboard. It's quite nice.
Okay.
Have they solved the problem? Is the criticism, or is all the criticism done? Is the conversation dead at that point?
Or is there more? Is there like a software layer, right? I mean, you've got brew there, you're probably developing for Linux, at least if you're doing the enterprise side of things.
It depends on what you mean, right? Are you defining the problem as like the 20-something% failure rate? Because, yeah, if you fix that, you fix that, right?
Well, also, it's just that they're extremely uncomfortable to type on, especially when you're typing a lot. At least for me, maybe because I'm an old typist. I mean, I've been typing they hurt.
Oh, they hurt. Oh, no, it hurts. Yeah.
So I guess I'm just thinking, if they could make it a competitive product like that, again, they may solve the criticism. Now, ironically, this particular rumor that we have linked in the show notes is about the MacBook Air. The 16-inch won't even get the keyboard this year, is what it suggests. The 16-inch that hasn't even been announced yet.
I mean, my issue as a buyer of these devices has always been that this is your most expensive laptop, and it is also your most unreliable.
Unreliable? What do you mean?
Well, no, it's not. This is not me asserting this, right? This is... People have not Consumer Reports. Who's the is it Anantech? Who does the what they think the return rates and defect rates are on all the Apple products?
Oh, the people that try to
yeah, it is 20-something%, and for a laptop that is minimum going to be $2,000 unless you're buying a base model, and probably for someone who has heavier needs, $3,000. I don't know, even if it's just 21%, right? That's not an acceptable failure rate, in my opinion.
Boy, that would be, that would be, if that's true, if that number's true, that would be, I mean, there's no way it could be that high.
Well, I mean, the Wall Street Journal did an entire piece on it, right? It's not, this isn't,
I mean, I know they're bad. I agree with you there. And they should be a lot better. I feel like I am that guy who always says, oh, the solution to Android's shortcomings is just to flash it with Lineage. So I'm going to be that guy for a moment, but...
Lay it on us.
Apple seems to be moving in the direction of supporting macOS more and more under virtualization, to the extent that they're even adding VirtIO drivers to...
Isn't that interesting?
Not even just to Catalina, but they're bringing those VirtIO drivers to the... What's the current version of macOS?
Mojave?
Yes, they're bringing them to Mojave even, in the latest releases of Mojave.
Wow.
Now, these VirtIO drivers are what allow an operating system to have drivers that are aware it's being virtualized.
It's optimized for virtualization.
Yeah, it communicates intelligently with the hypervisor. And that's not an accident. Like, those don't just accidentally...
Whoopsie, VirtIO.
Mm-hmm. And Windows 10 also works really great under virtualization. And when you use an AMD card with PCI pass-through, you can have full GPU acceleration for both of these. You can't do it at the same time, but you can load a VM and have full GPU pass-through for either OS on any hardware you want that supports virtualization.
Which is a lot these days.
And I think it's time, we were just having a pre-show conversation, like we have here at the studio and also on our VPSs, we have divorced, as many of you probably have, the applications from the operating system. Well, now we can divorce the operating system from the hardware. It's all available to us. It just takes a little extra setup, but you do it once, right?
You do it once, and then you've got it all configured and ready to go, right?
If you are someone like me who mostly is now developing server-side software, and frankly, some Windows desktop, but mostly server-side running on Ubuntu, Linux, or SUSE, why would I not just VM macOS Catalina for when I need it and literally buy the nicest laptop with the best eGPU that I could possibly afford?
Would you spend most of your time there? Would you be switching around? Because you still got your question of, where are you spending?
It's not super portable. That's the biggest downside I find. However, there are ways to do, and this is an area I don't really know much about, but on modern, like our laptops, your laptop right there, supports virtualizing the GPU. So you can actually carve out your Intel GPU as a dedicated GPU to the VMs all in that laptop. You just only have Intel graphics.
There's a bunch of caveats with that, I thought. Isn't it like dependent on which, it doesn't matter really, but which one you have and which kind of virtualization?
Yeah, I mean, all this stuff is pretty hardware specific, and you've got to know which flags to look through and match up the CPU and the motherboard and how all that works.
Like I say, it takes a little bit of work, but then you have sort of the stability and reliability of virtualization under those operating systems too. So then you gain things like snapshots before an update, before all those kinds of things. So you actually bring a level of stability to your development environment that you don't have when it's running on native hardware. Like I said, at the top of this, I'm going to be the guy that says, solve all your Android problems by running Lineage. Like, it's not really an option for everybody, but I think maybe it's more of an option than people realize. Because I'm on a laptop. I didn't think it was possible.
Right.
And it's game changer.
Especially if, like your mic, right? Maybe you just need to run it as a build server for Xcode or something. You just need to get stuff signed and through there, and otherwise you can develop wherever you want.
I guess what it really comes down to is the Macintosh hardware and the macOS operating system. Is it important to you that you are in that ecosystem, and that maybe is it a statement Is it a status symbol product? Or is the Mac OS and its applications simply a tool in which you use to get your job done? And maybe, depending on what answer you have for that, maybe that tells you what route to take.
Now, can I run the ball forward about 5 years, though?
Well, let's do it.
This all makes sense, and this all works because Windows, Mac OS, and Linux are all effectively Intel systems, right? They're x86, x64.
Yeah, we're all running on the same chips.
What happens when Uncle Tim throws down the gauntlet and says, and ARM? That comes a lot harder, right? The virtualization, the overhead.
I think everything changes unless there's ARM hardware out there that can. Yeah, I think everything changes. But at that point, too, you got to figure a lot of your application workflow would change, too. And you may actually want an x86 version of Mac OS around for compatibility reasons for a really long time. And again, virtualization would really be a good use case there.
That would be a fascinating transition.
Yeah, it will be.
It's going to be painful, I think, for a lot of people.
And maybe it's another reason not to invest in multi-$1,000 Mac products when they could be at the end of a line.
You mean a $47,000 Mac Pro?
Right. I mean, look at that, right? I mean, even if you could come up with another screen that is still high resolution that can connect to that thing, and there are not a lot of options there, you're still looking at probably a base $6,000 out the door for the machine once you get it configured, even adequately. Or you could put all of that money into a custom build PC or a machine you buy that could get you a lot more, and then you virtualize, and that could get you stability in a way you hadn't really considered before. And the trend line for Mac OS has been to support virtualization more and more. It started like 5 years ago with licensing changes, and the support for it has just accelerated since then.
Not to troll, but what if you could have a userland with like a high software compatibility and a desktop environment used by millions, and a kernel from a different OS that you can work natively in?
You were really talking up. You kind of trolled last week. I am curious, though, because you mentioned you were doing VS Code and having that nice integration. I mean, how serious are you? Are you actually liking it that much? Is it working for your needs? Do you feel like you're effectively targeting Linux this way?
I have deployed software. I have built binaries, a few of them that I've needed. Now, we're mostly talking about server-side software I'm developing, so it's, it's been perfectly fine. The only, and this is dumb, is that like the WSL stuff is very being worked on. I'm also using that new fancy terminal.
Oh, I have not tried that yet.
Which, thanks to listener Sean McBride, gave me some pointers on how to set that up because the documentation's not great yet. I mean, as far as doing, doing Ruby and doing some .NET Core, it's just fine. I am interested to see what happens. Like I have a Qt project that I just need to pull down and take a look at something for somebody. What happens if I try to run that in WSM? I think the answer is it's just going to fail. I have to say, if you are a web developer who also needs to touch, it's almost the old Microsoft argument, right? The old MacBook argument. If you are a web developer who occasionally needs like Xcode for like signing a Cordova or a PhoneGap app, this is great, right? I do have Windows applications in the field, in the market. The vast majority of the software I write is being deployed, like I said, to SUSE and Ubuntu servers. So that's
SUSE.
Yeah, don't even get me started.
I know. We don't want to disparage. Legitimately, though, real talk, what about the paper cuts of running Windows? Like the fact that the start menu's got all over it, the fact that the Windows updates process takes a decade, the fact that it's a mismatch of UI, all those things.
Okay, I'm waiting on writing the review of this with the experiences. I am intentionally using hardware that is 100% Linux compatible, just in case I want to slap Pop! OS or Elementary or something on this.
Nice. Yeah, okay.
It is amazing to me how unpleasant the Windows kind of just setting up your machine experience still is these days.
Yeah.
Like I had to delete Candy Crush. That's ridiculous to me.
Wow. Yeah, or how fiddly you have to get with the power saving settings and the update settings. It's not hard. It's lots of fiddly settings that you spend a lot of time overall changing.
It's like using plasma. No, I can't.
It's kind of fair in a way, actually.
I mean, it's all going to be about trade-offs, right? Like I know plenty of people who I've tried to evangelize desktop Linux to, who are Mac people, and they're like, "Are you kidding me?" Right? Like I would never do that. I would say that if you're a comfortable desktop Linux user, are you probably going to switch to Windows 10? Not unless you already needed Windows, right? Am I 100% on Windows 10? I am for now. Do I think it will last? Well, it used to be the case, and this is Mike's old man hat. The last time I seriously ran Windows, other than for like a 4-month job, was I think it was Windows. Oh God, I don't even know the word. 8. Windows 8. It has been my experience that Windows machines tend to slow down after a while.
Oh yeah, the Windows slowdown creep. We all know that.
Yeah, so if that starts to happen, I will probably get frustrated. You know how I get, and like, pour a beer into it or something. But I want to be careful how I phrase this. I don't think the Linux community should view WSL as a threat. I really actually think it's an opportunity, right? It is a sign that Linux has won. Now, maybe it's bad if you happen to be a GNOME developer, right? Or the elementary OS team or Pop OS team. Yeah.
You know what, Mike, as you're talking about this, you know what I realize is this is, it is a sign of success, just like wine was a sign of success for Windows.
Yeah. People want it, right? That's why Microsoft's investing real time and energy and dev hours into it.
Okay, can I come at this from another angle then? So what deficiency is Windows 10 as a desktop addressing that you have found, say, in a day-to-day Pop OS or modern Ubuntu install?
Well, that's an unfair question, right? Because I have 4 Windows applications currently in the field. So the deficiency is...
No, I mean, aside from that, like I'm wondering, is application compatibility truly a differentiator for you at this point? Is there things that Windows 10 is doing better that make you think, gosh, even when I'm not managing Windows applications that I'm shipping, there's reasons to stay here?
Actually, that is a great question. It turns out that my software application compatibility, other than working on these native Windows apps, is better on Windows and Linux than it is on Mac. Because anything I wanted to use, whether it be entertainment or work, there is either a Linux equivalency, right? Or indeed it's a Linux tool that I couldn't use on Windows before, or that I had to install via Homebrew for Mac. Or if it's a game, it can run near natively with Lutris on Linux. On Mac, I actually have, like, for instance, I am addicted to Magic the Gathering Arena. Great game. It's, for those who don't know, it's in fact a former host here, Jason, used to play it all the time, right? That ran flawlessly on Pop OS. Doesn't run at all on Mac without some pretty deep wine hackery.
Oh.
Same thing with my MMO of choice, Star Trek Online. I play it.
Oh, dude, yes.
I play it on Linux. In fact, I don't play it at all under Windows, and you can't even get it to run on Mac OS, even with crossover and wine and all of those things. It's just not happening on Mac OS.
So I mean, for me, and I know this is kind of a sideways way to answer your question. This experience has shown me, when I eventually settle down again, I'm probably going to distro hop a little on Linux or stick with Windows 10, or probably dual boot. But Mac, you know what? At this point in 2019, I really don't think I don't think you should need to compromise with your operating system, which I know sounds like, not nice, but Pop OS is really nice. Elementary is really nice, right? Ubuntu is nice.
No, I follow you. This is the end result of Linux essentially becoming, in a way, a runtime. And then, like I just said earlier, divorcing the applications from the operating system, or making it possible to run Windows applications on Linux and Linux application on Windows. All of a sudden, the desktop, assuming you're not subscribed to any particular philosophy, is a lot more fluid, and it matters in some ways a lot less even.
Right. I mean, like, Mac added all that, Xhive stuff just partially to help facilitate running Docker containers and a VM there.
I've run Docker on Mac OS, and it runs just fine. It's got there's a nice GUI for it and everything. It's the craziest
get that
thing.
GUI on Linux, yeah, right?
It's crazy.
Comes with Docker Compose right there.
Yeah, I know. So I guess my point is that it's just becoming less and less relevant. Less and less. And then when you containerize the applications up in Flatpaks or Snaps, it's at a whole nother level.
Oh, well, let me ask you. I know we're harping on this, but you guys are, would it be wrong for me to call you freedom terrorists?
Wow.
I would think yes.
Sort of like, it's more like a love and peace kind of vibe going on, less of a Greenpeace, bomb something going on.
Okay, can I State Department spin that then?
Yeah.
You're freedom fighters.
Warriors, sure.
Revolutionaries.
It's less aggressive though, but we're on the path to righteousness.
We're freedom recommenders.
Have you heard about freedom?
Do you have a moment?
Are you Freedom Jehovah's Witnesses? Is that what? Don't you guys feel that honestly, JB should just be taking a victory lap here, right? You won.
We may have bet on the right horse, I suppose. Although what JB originally sought out to be was really a podcast network about the desktop of Linux, which...
Oh, well, never mind.
Yeah. But, things change and evolve, and the network has changed and evolved, and we still cover that probably disproportionately to the actual market size, but it's what we're all into. And we are very lucky that more and more of the workloads have come to Linux. So that has been very fortunate because people want to know what's going on with it now.
Yeah, there's a certain spirit of it, I think, that's distilled in the desktop. I mean, in some ways it is separate, but many of the communities that make both software commingle.
Well, I would say there's honor in fighting a losing battle. And speaking of losing battles, Wes, how's that Objective-C?
Oh, Mike, I knew you were going to ask about this.
I love these challenges so much.
Ooh, yeah, okay. So you sent me on a very different path to the world of Objective-C. And okay, so I'll be honest, I didn't go down the complicated route of setting up a Mac OS VM. Now, that might be something worth trying in... Yeah, right. That may be something worth trying in the future, but you encouraged me to explore what other options existed. And it's been really interesting. I mean, I'm interested in programming languages, and Objective-C kind of has some... I mean, it's been around for a long time, so it's got some interesting origins, especially the connection to Smalltalk. But because I was using the GNU step environment, it kind of felt like a history lesson. It felt like I was studying a dead language in some ways.
The GNU step, I looked into, if you want to get a modern GNU step live environment, I believe it was last updated in 2017. Yeah, I looked into that.
Yeah, but it's packaged up like the compiler and the runtimes and stuff, packaged up in Debian, no problem. So I was able to pull those down. Got a couple things compiling. I did Hello World, and as Mike asked, I was playing around with some of the message passing stuff, which is, I mean, honestly, I can see why Mike loves Objective-C. Now, for me, it was kind of a low level, going back to a little lower level of software in a little bit.
Well, it is what, 30 years old, isn't it?
Yeah. But comparing it to C++, as was kind of done at the time, it's remarkably simple. So, even for needing to have a bunch of sort of inherent complexity, because it is lower level, it is targeting sort of complicated environments and doing so in an older style and running closer to the metal, it's still surprisingly civilized, I would say. And would you agree with me, Mike? Is that kind of what you feel about it?
I'm sorry, I'm tearing up because it warms my heart that it's 2019 and I somehow got someone to do Objective-C.
I find it kind of ironic even that it became popular because of the iPhone, which is such a modern device.
Weird.
And this is such it's that whole story. And the fact that then Java on Android, it's such a...
Those are not, it's not how I would have predicted it going.
Right, you wouldn't think so.
All.
So it's interesting because I didn't say anything to you while you were doing it. I did not expect you to go the GNU step route because that's actually the harder path.
Oh, you could have been helping me this whole time? Mr. Dominic.
Well, no, the option was also set up a Mac VM, which I don't know how hard or easy that, right? So,
I mean, I honestly, I do kind of want to, I need one of those anyway. Not need, but it would be fun to have. I've Hackintoshed in the past.
So when I get mine finalized.
Oh, yeah.
I'll hook you up.
I agree with everything you said, and I would even wonder if you could expound more on it felt like going back in time, because I actually think Objective-C is a language that is unabashedly from the early 90s. And I know it was older than that, but really that's when, yes, there were updates later on when the iPhone came out, but its core, its concepts, the way it thinks about programming, right? Its direct ancestor is Smalltalk, right? It's like Smalltalk in C++, kind of. But it says that we are object-oriented, but we are a small language, right? I mean, how did you feel about just the size of the language?
Yeah, it doesn't, it's not super weighed down by a ton of stuff. And obviously, you get more of that if you're targeting, the Mac ecosystem and using a bunch of their libraries on top. But yeah, C was, I think, the first programming language that you could really count if we don't count Visual Basic 6, which I don't think we should.
What about Real Basic?
The half counts. So it did, it was kind of nice. All of my more recent, low level experiments have been playing around with Rust, or I have done some C++ a few years ago, and I don't have a strong desire to go back.
Interesting.
I think I could handle Objective-C. I mean, these days, it would probably be Swift, but it was an interesting contrast because using the message passing system, and some of the inheritance from Smalltalk, even for being a low level compiled language, it's surprisingly dynamic. And I think you miss out on a lot of that, for better and for worse. I mean, there are lots of good things about the extra, staticness and safety of Swift, but it's an interesting throwback, or, has such a unique place in the landscape of programming language design. And I think it's interesting how popular it got from kind of obscure origins.
I have a couple questions for you. So the second question I'll do first. How cool is it that you can go like back in time with some of this stuff, and not like GNU Step is fairly well preserved, but not everything is. Like, we need to do better at preserving these things and having ways to stand these up.
Well, yeah, I mean, I know like with Smalltalk, there's similar things where you can get some of the images and get them to run. And there's even, I forget the name of it, but there's some like modern distributions of it. It is interesting though, because you have different eras of computing, and you can contrast that with, say, looking back at Android versions, which is like impossible because so much of it is online that you just can't really preserve that environment. So it's nice when you have some of these older languages because they just weren't connected systems, right? It's all standalone. It just exists as long as you have the source material. And because it was added as part of the GNU project, that's free. So it's preserved.
It would be so cool if there was like some archive.org style project that would create like maybe a Linux environment VM snapshot of something in time and then make it available. And you could just start up the entire environment from that time or something.
Maybe like a little interactive thing you could go through and maybe explore what made that language unique or explore that environment. Okay,
so my first question was, as somebody who's got no experience at this, object-oriented seems like it would get very complex after a while. Like, am I wrong? It seems like for something simple, no problem, you could keep the whole thing in your head. But you start to get to something that's fairly even somewhat complicated, it seems like it would just become a massive thing to keep track of that you wouldn't be able to keep it all in your head.
That's why FP exists.
What is FP?
Yeah, it sounds like you should stay tuned for the next episode of Coder Radio, Chris, because we're going to have a little conversation about functional programming and object-oriented programming.
Ooh, nice tease.
And how they fit together, and maybe how to combine the paradigms a bit.
I like that. Good. Hey, guys, good idea.
Well played.
Interestingly, I think Objective-C is kind of neat because, like, again, comparing it to C++, the message passing style it just feels a little simpler. So I can see that aiding. And then there's just lots of, you get design patterns and paradigms that one applies for certain abstractions to try to, detangle some of that mess.
So do you think for a junior developer, there would be any value in saying, you know what, just for like a weekend, stand up a GNU Step environment on your Arch distro, because that's what you all seem to run, and, go back in time?
No, man, I got Debian 10 on here. Come on.
Fedora over here.
Oh, Debian. You know what? You're on the cutting edge, man. Debian.
Debian 10 just came out this weekend.
I know. See, damn it, they got me again.
That's amazing.
Hey, I'm running Windows. Come on.
I would say if they're interested in doing iOS development, yeah, maybe. Like, it could be interesting from that perspective as a way to get the toe in the water. If you're just interested from like the historical language stuff, maybe it's better to just play with Smalltalk directly.
Interesting. Okay.
But I mean, it's easy enough. So I wouldn't dissuade someone from doing it. I certainly enjoyed it. And it might be worthwhile. I mean, I guess even with Swift, it's good to know a little Objective-C, right? Just enough to read it, let's say.
Oh, I think that's definitely the case. Yeah. Because that's not going away anytime soon. You're working on a project that's been around for a little bit?
ARM transition.
I was also pretty impressed with... it was a stark reminder of the weird history Apple's had with the open source community and some of the license battles and the transition away from GPL software as they distribute it, and LLVM and its rise to fame. Like, all of that happens in the Objective-C history as well, right? It's part and parcel of that.
Yep.
It's tied to Apple's history. So it's fun to look at that way too.
It's the same reason you can't have a good version of Bash on Mac.
All right. Well, do we know what Mike's challenge is going to be?
Oh, no.
Oh, yes, we do.
Now, just a little public service announcement. Next week's episode, because of travel, will be pre-recorded. So the challenge will be taking a week off.
That's right.
So there'll be a break there. Because
Mike's going to get a little extra time.
Yeah, we're about to record next week's episode in just a little bit. Well, I won't be here, but they are.
Yeah, actually, I think it's going to fit in just fine. As you'll see, this is perhaps overdue, but Mike, you got me with Objective-C, so I'm gonna give you something close to my own heart. Clojure is your choice this week.
Fair enough. I did this to myself. Okay.
Yeah.
So do you want me to give you some starting resources, or should I leave you to fend in the fields of Google?
You know what? Leave me in the woods because I want to see like someone who doesn't know Clojure. Where do they go?
Okay. I'm going to be interested to see what you find.
You might come across a Wes Payne talk if you look hard enough.
Ooh, now I'll be looking for it.
I love it. You both held on to these particular choices much longer than I expected. Kept your powder dry for a while.
It's all about the slow play.
We'll see if this is the peak now. Now you're just going to be throwing random things at each other.
Now we're going to go for the most annoying languages possible after this, I think. How about the Lowell's cat language? No.
Oh, yeah. I mean, brain could be included as well. That's a classic.
Wonderful.
You know, guys, I always appreciate letting me hang out for a bit. It's always nice.
Oh, it's fun. Thank you for joining us.
Oh, no, you quit it. Did you know that we have a great website where people can get all kinds of resources? I think it's coder.show.
Coder.show. You can find our RSS feed. You can find ways to contact us. And you can find the whole back catalog of Coder Radio episodes. And, I mean, there's a whole bunch of them, so go start listening.
You know, we should take a moment too, Mike, if you got things going on, anything you want to mention or send the listeners, take a moment because we got a space right here just for you to let them know about it.
Oh, beautiful. Check out @2minuko on Twitter and check out themadbotter.com. We're going to have some cool stuff in about, well, I guess since we're doing a time delay, 4 weeks.
Oh.
It's better just to follow and see what happens over there.
Then you know, yeah. But you can always bookmark it. Just check back in a couple of weeks.
Easily done.
I'll plug. Let's see, I'll plug @ChrisLAS, and also I'm going to plug User Air. Such a good show. That is such a good show. Go check out the most recent episode, and then if you like it, go check out the back catalog. But oh man, such a good show. So we don't give it enough attention.
It's great, yeah, and it's a fun diversion. It's a little different than a lot of the other shows on the network. So if you're tired of hearing about tech news, go get some real life news.
Error.show.
I'm on Twitter too. I'm @Wes Payne.
What?
And
really?
I'm gonna go plug your show, Linux Action News.
Oh,
I really
thanks.
enjoyed this week's episode, especially your well-reasoned breakdown of this whole DNS over HTTPS debacle
Mozilla's
and
an internet
evil
villain.
Mozilla.
Yeah.
Some tells me we're going to talk more about this topic.
Yeah. Internet the Mozilla villain is really all kind of just way out there, and so it really all comes down to something that you wouldn't expect. And I think people are like now realizing there's something kind of big coming down the pipe too. Yeah, that was a fascinating episode. Thank you. LinuxActionNews.com.
You can find all the other shows over at JupiterBroadcasting.com. Thank you all for joining us. We'll see you next week.